a veteran security service officer and diplomat who spent many long decades spying for the Kremlin. First for the communists, and then for the KGB strongman who eventually replaced them.
Especially here with the mustache, you see. Is watching.
The son of influential parents, for whom a dizzying career was written by the people. But he traded it for pleasing the Kremlin's masters.
Yes, I am ready to humble myself.
The secretive shadow curator of the Russian Führer's international foreign policy, next to whom Sergei Lavrov is just an errand boy. Go.
Away, boy, don't get in the way.
A spy who operated in plain sight for decades, in the absolute center of Mother Russia's most vicious enemy.
I want to go home, to my homeland.
A longtime political enemy of Barack Obama, a close personal friend of Steve Witkoff, and also the likely handler of Jeffrey Epstein. And his underground sex empire.
Oh, good evening. My name is Elvira, and our little love shop is at your service.
A loyal servant of the notorious Putin, who was rewarded for his service with extravagant palaces, apartments, and luxury cars worth tens of millions of dollars.
Believe me, when it comes to money, I can do absolutely anything at all.
79-year-old Yuri Ushakov, a patriarch of Russian and Soviet diplomacy. A Moscow underling who instantly turned into a joker as soon as Trump moved back into the White House.
Bloomberg. Witkoff advised Ushakov on what to say to Trump.
Why do American diplomats and politicians come to pay their respects to a quiet retiree? For what achievements does Putin forgive him for unthinkable blunders and failures? And how did an inconspicuous bureaucrat, unnoticed until a certain point, turn into the key puppet of the bunker villain? Little is known about Yuri Ushakov's childhood and family. It seems just like with Putin, this information is strictly classified. He was born in 1947 in Moscow. His parents were big shots in the post-war Soviet capital. It was the height of the Cold War with the United States. Yuri graduates from school and enters the most prestigious university in the Soviet Union, the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. It's no secret to anyone in the USSR. Admission to this institution was open only to the golden youth. The offspring of the top party elite, government members, or representatives of the security services.
Do you actually know who my dad is?
At that time, MGIMO was the communist forge for diplomats and spies. And most often it was two in one. In 1970, right after graduating from university, the young graduate is immediately taken into the Soviet Foreign Ministry.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
Our wunderkind is sent on a foreign assignment to Denmark. Given his work experience and age, such prospects and a career leap were nothing more than a dream for the average citizen of the Soviet Union. After breathing in the air of freedom in Europe to his heart's content, in '77, Ushakov writes his candidate's dissertation. The topic, the détente in the arms race and the warming of relations that began between Moscow and Washington. Despite working in Denmark, the ambitious spy diplomat was always drawn to the main overseas enemy.
Tell me, American, what is real, true strength?
It was in Copenhagen that the future grey eminence of foreign policy would encounter a tragedy for himself and all Putin loyalists. The news that the prison of nations had collapsed.
First of all, it must be acknowledged, and I have already said this, that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century.
Having inherited the Soviet Foreign Ministry, Ushakov initially traveled extensively across Europe on behalf of the Russian one. And already in 1998, after serving as Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, our resident diplomat was sent as ambassador to the coveted America. I am staying!
I'm going to live here.
Ushakov remained the top Russian in the US for more than 10 years. During that time, as many as 3 American presidents changed in the White House. Ushakov outlasted first Clinton, then Bush Jr., and finally, after Obama's victory in 2008, Yuri returned to Moscow. Ushakov's service in the US coincided with a period of friendly relations between Russia and the West, and our hero took full advantage of it. He did everything he could to establish contacts with the American elite, tried to befriend promising politicians, and sought to build trusting relationships with not-so-far-sighted representatives of the authorities. At the same time, of course, he never forgot to spy, bribe, and cultivate the right connections in high circles.
I suggest we become close friends, even at home.
The years that Agent Yuri spent working in the US amounted to thousands of meetings, dozens of recruitments, and hundreds of secret files and correspondences with the American establishment. There is much to suggest that Ushakov may have been at the origins of the case involving financier and pimp Jeffrey Epstein, and that it was he that the Russian intelligence services largely owe such a brilliant operation as the honey trap. It is possible that Ushakov was one of the shadowy overseers of the sex empire run by the convicted pedophile.
Epstein's sex empire was a KGB honey trap. The financier and pedophile repeatedly held negotiations with Putin. After the guilty verdict was handed down, Russian girls were specially brought in to gather compromising material on world-famous figures.
Who else but the Russian ambassador to the US, and at the same time Agent Ushakov, is best suited for the role of that very friend of Putin whom Epstein turned to on matters related to Russia?
Sent by Jeffrey Epstein. I need a visa. I have a friend of Putin's. Should I ask him?
Ushakov spent most of his time abroad at Russia's favorite diplomatic dacha in the US. It was also here that most of Yuri's unofficial meetings with members of the American elite took place.
A crowd has gathered for debauchery.
After returning to Russia, Ushakov immediately found himself right under Krylishko's wing of the Gbishny Tsar, and US President Barack Obama, without hesitation, shut down the FSB branch right under his nose. The White House explained the decision by saying that the so-called Russian dacha in Maryland was nothing more than a spy base for Russian intelligence agents.
He takes the documents to have a look, and then we end up with loud laughter and mockery from foreign intelligence services.
Upon returning to his homeland, Ushakov joined the government team of the Russian Führer, who at that time had temporarily become prime minister, giving up his seat in the presidential chair, Medvedev's placeholder. In 2012, when Putin returned to the throne, the mastodon Tushakov became his assistant on foreign policy matters. It is Yuri who has the exclusive right of access to the ear of the bunker villain. And for 14 years now, it is he who has been whispering all the most important and decisive advice and proposals on foreign policy to the dictator, the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Sergei Lavrov, compared to the heavyweight Ushakov. He's just an errand boy, really, a fetch and carry type. Oh, and get lost, don't get in the way.
Well, the old man is a classic example of a scoundrel.
Putla trusts and respects Yuri Viktorovich so much that not even a massive scandal affected his position in the slightest. In 2017, the CIA carried out a secret special operation to rescue the most valuable US informant in Putin's inner circle, and together with his entire family. As it turned out later, it was about the right hand that had been there for many years, Ushakova, employees of the Foreign Policy Directorate, Presidential Administration, Oleg Smolenkov. In other words, at Ushakov's instigation, an American spy infiltrated Putin's inner circle.
It will be a fiasco. This is a fiasco, bro.
Hooray, patriotism, unscrupulous service to the motherland, and working against the USA. These, of course, are the most important criteria in Putin's Russia. But you can't live on love for birch trees alone. Like most other Russian boyars with Putin's permission, Ushakov is allowed to milk the state cow to the fullest. Yuri's family owns several luxury apartments in the very center of Moscow, as well as a palace and a plot of land in the Moscow suburbs.
Remember, gentlemen, it is widespread corruption that will eventually ruin this country.
In 2011, Ushakov bought a 220 square meter apartment on Gogolevsky Boulevard. This is the very center of Moscow. The residential complex, Russian modern. The Kremlin is a 15-minute leisurely walk from the house. An apartment like this costs about 210 million rubles. Ushakov's daughter, Tatiana, settled nearby. She lives in a clubhouse on Ostozhenka. It was purchased in 2019. Its area is slightly less than her father's, 172 square meters. But the price is higher, 258 million. Another apartment belonging to Tatiana Ushakova is located on Kutuzovsky Prospect. It has 4 rooms and an area of 157 square meters. By the way, the entire Soviet elite used to live in this building, including Brezhnev and Andropov.
What beauty. Magnificent.
In 2015, even before buying the large apartment, Tatiana purchased a country property in the Odintsovo district. 3,000 square meters of land and a house of 504 square meters. The market value of the estate is about 150 million rubles. And what true Russian patriot wouldn't support with their ruble? The German auto industry. The entire Ushakov family, from the youngest to the oldest, owns a fleet of luxury cars. Investigative journalists have valued Ushakov's assets at 1 billion rubles. And this is a bureaucrat who has spent his whole life working in public service.
The Ushakov family's car fleet is also quite impressive, consisting mainly of Mercedes vehicles. They belong to Ushakov's daughter Tatiana, his wife Svetlana, and another one to his grandson Mikhail, who, by the way, was born in Sweden. The total value of the Ushakov family's car fleet is 70 million.
Putin generously allows Ushakov to rob the Russian people. It's no surprise. After 4 years of failures in Ukraine, the former US ambassador and intelligence officer became a key asset for negotiating with the shrewd Trump administration. Apparently, his Washington ties and the compromising material collected there are doing their job.
It seems like all is lost. Trump wants to give Ukraine tomahawks. Damn it all, what should we do? We need to get on the phone immediately with that jackass Ushakov and give him a heads up.
As Bloomberg found out, in October 2025, ahead of Vladimir Zelensky's visit to the White House, where, as reported by the American press, Trump was planning to give Ukraine tomahawks, the US President's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, urgently called his friend Yuri. During the phone conversation, Witkoff advised Yuri to make sure Putin called Trump before Zelensky arrived. He practically dictated to Ushakov the text that the Kremlin chief could use to win over Patkov, meaning the US president, and persuade him not to give Ukraine the missiles. And remind me, who are you?
Stephen Witkov. His code name is the Realtor.
This is the first time I've heard of such a thing. State the password.
The king was sitting on the suitcase.
Well, greetings then, Comrade Witkov.
Don't call me comrade, because we might be under surveillance.
Understood. Buongiorno, Senorita Witkov. By the way, that's exactly it. Yuri Ushakov organized a meeting between Putin and Trump in Alaska. He has a very keen sense and understanding of all the weaknesses of the current White House occupants. He knows exactly how to ingratiate himself, and to appeal to two self-absorbed masters of life at the same time.
You know what's going on. Our president described the entire situation to you very vividly during that specific interview session when you asked a similar question about how they would potentially behave under the leadership of the Trump administration. And he described it as them being like obedient little dogs at their master's feet. Well, that's pretty much what's happening right now.
So, Ushakov rephrased Putin's widely recognized statement regarding European leaders and their separate position from the US on aid to Ukraine.
Right now, there is a significant and ongoing disagreement between the European political elites and the newly elected President Trump. Trump has a very different set of perspectives and ideas about what is good and what is bad, including on gender policy and several other issues. They are quite unhappy with this new direction. But I assure you, with Trump's unique character, with his persistence, he will bring order back quite quickly. And all of them, you will see, it is going to happen very soon. All of those creatures will be right there at their master's feet, gently and loyally wagging their tails.
Later, Donald Trump reposted this statement on his social media. Of course, he really liked the way Putin praised him. Ushakov achieved the incredible. Thanks to him, the bunker villain managed to return to global politics. And he became acceptable for handshakes again. It is precisely Ushakov's connections and influence on the US president's inner circle that have allowed the Petersburg thug to successfully fool the self-satisfied Donald for at least a year now. Until quite recently, the inconspicuous and quiet old man suddenly turned into the gray eminence of the terrorist federation's foreign policy.
This means big money and great trust for the young men.
Despite his advanced age, Yuri is a crucial cog in the mechanism of Putin's power. A sort of symbiosis of a KGB man, a spy, and a diplomat has made Ushakov indispensable. And so, it is quite safe to say, one can naturally assume that the 79-year-old elder will only be carried out of his assistant's chair feet first, or perhaps together with the notorious villain in the bunker. I want to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. We do not intend to mislead in any way, but instead we simply focus on bringing humor. Please take this in good spirits, with a smile.